I'll look if you don't mind me.
There's the sink in there.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's any kind of glasses or anything.
There's no glasses in our wall.
Show me, I'll go do it.
I don't, for workshops, I don't dress up for these things anymore. So, regular school meeting, I'll get all fancy up, button tie and all that. No, I don't wear a tie. I can't remember the last time I wore a tie.
See, I met you guys at state convention.
You met me at,
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
yeah, I was a little different back then. I dressed up for that too, being around
I
everyone.
was gonna say, yeah, you would consider me.
I'm the one that was like trying to get all the info.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you were asking a lot of good questions.
He's got his computer down there now.
Trying to learn.
I know we talked to Focus too.
Yep. We went over there, we got on with them right away.
Motherboard and Intel chip.
Yeah, so learning my roles, learning jumping in.
10th
I've been
generation.
on for a year and a few months now.
Okay,
So,
Amazing is
yeah, it's been a crash course.
that's great though.
Oh, yeah.
that one's still on
You know,
Windows 10.
these districts, they need
Of course,
good
it doesn't
support.
have the security
work
and all
I
that.
hope so.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I've been,
Okay, I gotta get one anyways.
like this
And that
week
was
is a
cheap
crash course
combination.
because it's 4th of July and I'm also the
And a new mother makes gold.
commissioner for the fire commission here in town. So
Yeah,
I got
it's a busy
meetings
time.
Wednesday.
Well, the old one we have
And
in there
then,
was,
I'm also director for Racine County for AWSC, which is the
the one upstairs, so we're going from
So I
I-9
represent
10th
our county
generation.
at the state level as well.
People downstairs.
So, and I've got that meeting in a couple weeks, like the next month and a half, I have no weekends to myself. Well, I
And
got
then one
softball.
upstairs is gonna get nine.
All work and then I finally get vacation,
That's just
so
get swapped out.
I'm the receiving end of many opinions in my life.
too many things just to try to be involved because
I'll kinda do
not many
research
people
about
have
what
the
I
time to
want.
do it.
Absolutely.
And then
Not saying I
I'll
really
shop.
have the time to
There's
do
that,
it,
there's
but-
new egg.
Look at her sporting the shorts, I love it.
No,
Hotter than it was today.
I don't remember.
It is warm.
There's like 2 or 3
warm in
places.
here.
I would have rather been doing the roof today than the last couple of weeks.
Well, I gotta say, this feels great in here, because I was at Whitewater 2 weeks ago, when it was that heat wave, right? It was like 100 degrees, and they did not have the building AC running, and we were in the upstairs library. It must have been like 90 in there. Drenched. And like,
They bring out.
Take us back
Good,
to,
at least they're not cooling the building that is probably very full.
yeah.
I got an older graphics card.
well, we could go over to the gym, it was nice, real nice over there.
So we're on a
Yeah,
third
the atrium,
RTX 30.
it's beautiful over there.
Did you come from that?
Well,
No, I had to pick Wyatt up from Panther Pride today.
medical.
They still do the Panther Pride over there, so.
Yeah.
For
Yeah, they've got that.
Are we
They've
ready?
got that.
Okay, you know Keith's not gonna be here tonight, right? Yep.
I gotta talk to him.
Okay, welcome to the Raymond School District Number 14's Board of Education workshop on this July 7th, 2025. This meeting is now called to order. It is 5:33 p.m.
I'll do the roll call.
Sure,
Ed Robinson.
Here.
Jenny Gonzalez.
Yep.
Mike Powers.
Yep.
Audrey Costa.
here,
And Keith Castington is absent, excused.
okay. Do we want to do pledge of allegiance? Did we jump ahead?
One way or
I don't know
another.
who's gonna say it.
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Verification of public notice pursuant 19.8. Boy, I've been on vacation a week, I can't tell. 19.841 Wisconsin statutes.
Meeting is posted in all the usual spots, schoolhouse doors, e-vergent, village hall, online, and media were notified and are present.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to the topics for learning and discussion in this meeting, and we have Nick here.
Yep.
Nick here, okay.
And Jim.
And Jim,
Nick and
okay,
Jim.
Nick and Jim.
Last time Jim was floating head, we had a screen and
That's right.
we were remote. So these are the gentlemen from Data Wrangler. So the 3 topics that are Data Wrangler, policy updates, and strategic planning updates as well. So for the first portion of the meeting, we wanted to invite in members of the Data Wrangler team, talk through, again, last year, the board approved installing a meter. The meter is on our main panel. That meter reads a variety of things, and that helps us to adjust some of our approach to energy consumption so that we can reduce the peak demand points to try to bring our costs down overall across the year. So now that it's installed, we're rolling it. We have meetings on the books. We have our fairly regular check-in with our members of our facilities committee. So Ed and Mike have met. They're very well informed with Nick, and Bob's back there as well. So Bob came in. Special for this. Thank you for coming tonight after being here all day today.
No problem.
That's it?
I got dinner done, I'm good.
That dinner's done, okay. So we wanted to just talk a little bit about the data wrangler system, and then you have a chance to ask questions about how it's been going and what we're gleaning from it. So I'll turn it over to them. I've got a little presentation here that you shared, so.
Yeah, we kind of sent over a summary. Nick has been in the trenches, kind of working with Bob and team to start to gather the data, make sense of the data. And I know these guys have started to take some actions.
Yep.
And, you know, I think you guys know a little bit about us. Actually, as I said, I was just at Whitewater 2 weeks ago, and they approved putting this in all their buildings. A lot of schools are using not only the energy savings piece, which is great, and that was what our core business is all about, but also the food service electricity reporting, which I know that this district is also using in kind of a unique way, I think, and maybe sharing that with Yorkville and looking at the net cost and then perhaps sharing that. I was kind of curious about how that was going, so I'll ask that question a little bit. And then we're also seeing a lot of schools use our third-party facility reporting, which basically says what is your electricity usage related to third parties. And then we're also seeing schools use that report for custodial expenses, and then sometimes it's for facility rental fees, other times it's for Fund 80, which again, I know this district unfortunately did not pass referendum. I know schools that didn't pass referendum sometimes look to that mechanism to help offset those hidden costs that a school district is supporting.
Sure.
So if there's questions about that tonight, I'm happy to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons why Nick actually suggested I come tonight.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
We are looking at the Fund 80 functionality.
Yep.
We don't have a Fund 80, but we
Yep.
plan to establish one in the fall.
Okay, okay.
That's our hope, and the board's gonna be the
Yep.
one that actually would establish that as part of our annual meeting. And so I think understanding what that
Sure,
would look like is just an important piece.
absolutely,
So,
yep.
So then at that point, when you do the Fund 80, do we then look at designating a certain area so that you guys can capture those energy costs?
Yeah,
Is
so,
that how the plan is?
so not necessarily. So because we've got the building metered,
Right?
we look at the difference between baseline consumption. Like, so for example, let me give
Okay,
you an
I gotcha.
example. Like weekend, the building's normally shut down, wound down. But let's say you've got a basketball tournament in the gymnasiums that are, you know, maybe it's a club, maybe it's whatever. That's a third party.
Yep, I'm with you.
So then our meter, we can see the difference in terms of the usage and the demand, and then we can get a cost basis, basically event by event. And what calendar system do you guys use for facility scheduling? Is it Our School Today, or is it
It's, Access.
Access? Okay, yep, that's like a Google product, I
Yes.
believe, right? Yeah, yeah, Google, so,
Access it, I think it's called. Yeah.
yep, I think a number of schools use like that functionality, so we basically take that data, an event by event calendar basis, pull that out, so that you basically have a calendar that's marked as third parties that are using, like, so if it's like a weekend activity, that's a third party, that's labeled in the calendar, third party event, right? Or if it's a rec basketball, you know, or, I don't know, do you guys do wraparound daycare, or
Yes.
wraparound care? That's a big one, because that's a lot of hours, right, in a significant space of a building,
Sure.
that adds up over time, so,
We
So
would
then
be-
do we charge them?
Well, Panther Pride currently runs as part of our regular Fund 10. Panther Pride would become a Fund 80, partial Fund 80 vehicle. So
Right.
in other words, we would run that through Fund 80, therefore we can then account for it a little differently, and we could charge, or rightfully charge for the use of the facilities when they have their.
And the
Before we
energy
get
they
too
might
much
be
further,
using.
Mark, the wife just messaged me on the phone. She's like, I'm watching it and we can't hear anything on line right now.
Because you're not using your microphone.
we just gotta put,
Have to use the microphone, there you go. You can talk right into that.
there we go.
Yeah.
Now, can she hear us now?
Can you hear us now? Ooh, you
There we
hear-
go. Is that better?
All right, I'll.
Let her know, have her check. So the thought then would be that we would have a Fund 80, which we could run partially funding for the Panther Pride. And that would be something that would be a childcare outside of our normal operating hours potentially. Like right now in the summer, there's no school functions, it's just all Panther Pride. So that would be something that would be part of their budget, and thankfully their budget runs well. So that would be a function that would make sense there.
If we're going to look at this Fund 80, and we're gonna look at it shortly, we should probably put some kind of spreadsheet together, or just bullet points as to what it might be used for, and how it might pay, and what it does, this, that, and the other thing. I'm sure Jeff is up to speed on all that, so.
Yes. Jeff Genovese is traveling back right now from floating in the ocean, so he'll be back tomorrow. Part of his commitment to the Fund 80 piece is absolutely all the breakdown of what does it mean, how does it work, how much is there, what's the purpose to the penny. That way you know how much would be pushed off into that particular mechanism.
She says not really. Even with it, so just so we know.
She's the one viewer I see that's on right now.
Yep, that's why I was just
That's
letting
good
you guys know.
I'll push
Turn
it closer.
up the volume.
That's right.
She says it's all the way up. Not trying to disturb everything, just
No, that's good.
Is she seeing us? or-
seeing us fine, but no,
Not-
can't hear anything.
Okay, anyway, go ahead, continue with your
Yep,
Gator
back
Wrangler
on to the more
discussion.
important things.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we can help advise Jeff, at least in terms of what we're seeing from other districts in the region, and how they're using Fund 80 and how they're using our reporting. So for example, like a neighboring district, like Elkhorn School District, for example, Bill Tree went over there, who's a school business officer, Jeff probably knows him, could pick his brain. They've been using our reporting for, into their Fund 80 levies and other things. But again, we're seeing schools reach for that, when it makes sense. And a lot of schools are also not only using ours for energy, but we track the hours. And so they're oftentimes taking custodial time also and saying, okay, that we're cleaning and doing other custodial activities with respect to these third parties. So for example, you got a, men's basketball league in the gymnasiums, well, you gotta clean up before and after, and that's not free either, right? The custodial time is something that oftentimes is actually probably the highest cost. The next highest cost would be the utilities.
Right.
So those are things that schools are recapturing those, costs that are hitting the school general fund, when in fact, they could be either recovered through rental fees or through Fund 80 levy, or again, whatever the schools, whatever means is appropriate for that school district. And so, but we're seeing schools get a lot of mileage out of that. And if at some point this evening you'd like to see a sample report on that, I'm happy. I don't know if Mike, if we have a way to pull it up, but I could show, because Oconomowoc showed this, they're another district that's been using this aggressively.
Sure. If you want to pull it up on yours, I can probably
Yeah.
jump over to yours.
Yeah, and I can pull
Sure.
that up
Sure.
later on if
Yeah.
we want to look at it some more. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
We've got about 10 more minutes on slate
Yeah.
for your presentation.
No,
here,
no,
so
we'll
Power
get-
through, Nick.
We'll get into the details here. So, let's go on to progress so far.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna have Nick kind of fill in the blanks here. And Nick, if you wanna walk through these, but I know we've been making progress, yeah.
All right, so hello everyone. I am Nick Kozeski. I'm the client services rep that works with the Raymond School District. And I'd say, let's see, over the past 4 or 5 months since our first report was in February of 2025, Bob and I have been working on these 4 main topics. Starting first with isolating the food service electricity costs that are associated with each of the pieces of equipment in the cafeteria. So I go in, I worked with Bob and went into the kitchen on a certain day and recorded all the different KW usages and the hours of runtime for each piece of kitchen equipment. And that is put into a document, and we're able to calculate the costs of how much energy is used to serve students breakfast or lunch on a daily or weekly basis. I'm also taking into account the hours that students are in the actual lunchroom. So looking at HVAC and lighting for those lunch periods.
Yeah, and it's for kitchen, but also for cafeteria. So cafeteria space is significant, right? And so in terms of, you know, HVAC and in terms of lighting. So we're able to look at that, and DPIs, they would say, yeah, that you can all include that in food service related costs. You know, should you want to pull money out of 50, or again, the net cost of food service.
Sure.
Just for data point, generally speaking, we're seeing in school session at least, food service cost coming in at about $1,000 a month, electricity wise. On average, might be a little lower in the summer because you're obviously not serving, but you're still storing all that food in the summer. So your walk-in freezers, coolers are still running all summer, so you still are bearing food service costs even in the summer while you're not actually serving school lunches. If you're storing food for fall lunches, it's still food service expense. So there is food service expense in the summer as well. And so I think in general, if you're thinking about a number, well, what's a food service costing us annually? It's probably, you know, $10,000 to $15,000 of electricity cost is coming directly from food service, and that's what we're finding.
So when you think about us, we're part of a 5-school consortium. So
Okay.
it's not just us in Yorkville, it's 5
Yep.
others. So when you
Yep.
think about billing, that's where we talk about what's the burden, the shared burden of those costs with Tahoe. So that's where this has some benefit, but we're just toeing the water right now on that. So these are some of the items that then Bob meets with Nick and I to talk through.
Right, so moving on to the second bullet, I would have to give a lot of credit to Bob, because Bob's been great in working with me and just been very on point when it comes to scheduling both heating and cooling within the building. But through our services and like our software, we're able to monitor and look at holiday breaks, professional development days, days that might be canceled due to like a snowstorm or inclement weather, and we're able to take a look at how the energy usage on those days is different compared to a week of school or the day of school prior. And then if, for instance, maybe something clicked back on or didn't lock out correctly during one of those days that we had off, we're able to look at that inside of our software.
And we see on like holiday breaks, which Bob, I think you've looked at, is, you know, do you go in unoccupied mode, or I know you guys don't have great controls yet for your building, some of the HVAC systems.
That is
but
going to be on their schedule sometime this summer.
that's
So
fantastic.
probably
Yep.
4 or 5 weeks yet before they have us on their schedule. So
Yep.
but before school starts, we should have upgraded software.
Oh, fantastic.
Hopefully have a little better control.
Yep. And that's what we see, schools that have programmable settings are able to really leverage that for optimizing and saving based on, you know, again, the data we're getting from the metering and how the utility's billing the school for power. So that's exciting, Bob, to hear that. I think you and Nick will be able to really make a lot of hay as you go forward with this.
Kind of goes with our decision on trying to get the money that we saved up this year with the facilities committee, and trying to get those controls to help,
Yeah.
you know, really kind of pull in this data wrangler and get the savings out of it.
Yep, that is the combination, is you've got understanding how the utility's billing you, you have the actual data, that the energy you're using, and then you're seeing how the HVAC is influencing that. Just to give you a feel, HVAC usually is 50% or more of a school's electricity usage. Food service is like 25 to 30%. And then depending on like the lighting and some of the, you know, how old or new the lighting is, which I know you guys have been doing some lighting upgrades, is usually 10 to 20% of that number. So I know you're doing LED upgrades, not to steal your thunder, but that's one thing Nick and Bob have been working on, so.
Let's see, I didn't want to.
Yeah, let's move ahead,
Yeah, let's
yeah.
move ahead.
So just a quick kind of view on, you know, from Energy Star portfolio manager's viewpoint, the school in the first 6 months of using the program has improved its energy efficiency a little bit already. So you can see this is data directly from the gas and electric bills that are entered in. And this is a year-over-year comparison, but only 5 months so far of this year compared to last year. This is the program, though, and the data that Focus on Energy will write that incentive check back to the school district after 2025. It's based upon this data. So we're seeing good initial steps in terms of some some small changes that have been made. And again, I'm really curious to see, usually in the summer months, you know, especially after summer school gets out, I know you guys have
It
some.
just ended last week.
Yep, so this is the time where schools are really able sometimes to make hay and make savings. And then also with more sophisticated controls as you enter in the new school year, you're gonna be able to have more, Bob, I know you'll have more ability to adjust things, kinda at your fingertips hopefully, or with this much simpler changes.
I'm interested to see how much it will save from changing lighting,
Yep,
because that uses a ton of.
I bet. And yeah, so here's what, this summer, these guys have in plan, or are working on currently. So Nick, if you wanna run through these real quick.
Yeah, so part of our Fund 50 project or ongoing program is we're looking at, or we are going to be replacing the walk-in fridge and freezer and hoping to get some good energy reduction or energy savings from those two units. Bob is working with his summer student help crew on updating all the current lighting fixtures throughout the classrooms. We're hoping with that switch over to LEDs, we're able to save a decent amount of lighting since it will be all consumption based. Another possibility is looking at installing occupancy sensors on these new lights, so when people aren't in the rooms, they'll switch off automatically.
We do actually have that on there, I'm just gonna look at adjusting them lower, I think they're 10-minute right now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try seeing if we can put it down to like 2 minutes or something like that.
Sure.
But then, looking at updating the HVAC scheduling software. I think that'll be very helpful for CERT fans and especially the furnace heating in the winter time. Because right now we're just playing with window units and individual AC units that are not scheduled.
Okay, that's good stuff, but I have a question.
Absolutely.
A couple questions.
Absolutely.
First of all, I look at your,
That's why we're here.
I look at your squiggly lines,
Okay.
your graph. Whereabouts, now this is just for when you started. I'm looking for where we have been
Sure.
and what our baseline, so I can see this and say, well, this is where our base, not that you have the graphing, but you probably have bullet points that can be looked at from some of the older electric bills.
Correct.
Yep.
So if we could see where that always lies relative to your graph, to just kind of say, oh, okay, we're making some progress.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's number one. And any other baselines that there might possibly be that you can identify. That's probably hard to do right now. But you can do an overall baseline for peak. And there are two different types of peaks that we're looking at, right?
Correct,
Monthly
correct.
and yearly,
That's
right?
right, correct.
And my background's an engineer, so I try to stay
That's
up on
good.
technology.
I'm an engineer too.
Good. There's a lot of these big batteries out there now. Some are salt batteries out of Germany, some are up here in Waukesha. It's a acid type battery. Would there be any value in loading up that battery in the evening so that when the peak comes on, you're pulling from the battery and not from the power company, so that peak comes way down to almost zero, so that it's a flat line? Have you heard of any of that?
So
And if you want to use that idea, fine, but just make sure I get some kickback.
So we've definitely looked into it, and I think even for schools, because, and for, we have industrial customers too in the region.
Right.
And I would say the big industrials, it starts to make economic sense.
Okay,
You know, so like some, you know, steel foundries or some other guys that have big spikes from maybe a specific thing they
Right.
do.
right.
We see, yes, that it kind of pencils economically and the ROI is, you know,
That's
reasonable.
because of battery cost?
Yeah, because the battery cost, and then also the reliability of the technology and the battery side.
It's
is-
coming a long ways.
It's coming, it is. It's
Germany's got
improving.
them set up with salt,
Yeah.
air,
Yeah.
oxygen, yeah.
So,
Okay, anyway.
but absolutely, so I think, but what I've seen with schools, and this is something actually up the road here, Random Lake, you know, Mike T, he's an innovator.
Yeah.
So they just got an electric bus. And so we were looking at, we didn't do it, but we were looking at, hey, you know, your electric bus is effectively a big battery.
Yeah.
And,
That's,
you know.
Duke Energy was gonna buy a bunch of school buses,
Right.
electric.
Right,
I happen to be involved in the EV
Okay.
market. I made
Okay.
the battery thermal management systems for cooling and heating batteries for buses. What bus was it they bought? You know the brand?
That's a good question.
Proterra? Well, there's only a handful. We make them. Anyway,
Okay,
Duke Energy was going to buy a bunch of buses.
Yep.
Run them in the morning, and then
Right.
during the day,
Right.
hook them all up to the grid, and then at night charge them.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So, yeah,
Exactly.
there's some neat stuff out there, but.
yeah. But you're right, it all comes back to how do you reduce that peak?
Right.
And in fact, like, for example, so when you think of a battery, now I'm gonna really kind of blow everyone's mind here a little bit, but you air condition your building, so like if you pre-cool your building in the summer and you get the humidity out in the morning, it's basically a battery, because then you can coast the building and it'll hold its humidity and temperature through the hottest part of the day. But you're pre-cooling that building, so it's acting like a battery, so you're not gonna have to actually spike that HVAC in the middle
But you
of
have
the
to
day.
have good insulation to do that,
You do, it helps,
which we don't have.
it helps, but, you know, but we see that and we play around with that with some schools, and that's something I think Bob and Nick will continue to experiment with this summer and learn about, you know, how much can the building hold. So, we'll continue to gather the data, but I think these guys are off to a good start. I think we want to see more energy savings, and I think with the control work, also, I think with these two guys looking aggressively at stuff now that summer school's out and the buildings aren't really occupied. I don't know, Bob, in terms of occupancy at this stage between now and the beginning of school year?
The only thing we really have is we have our Panther Pride, our wraparound care for summer in the atrium.
Yep.
A dozen kids, 20 kids a day or something
Yeah,
like
20,
that.
25 kids, yeah.
Otherwise, the rest of the building is just my crew, the office
Yeah.
staff. But usually if we're walking into a room,
Yep.
we're scrubbing the room, so everything else in the building is turned off.
Yep.
So your univents fans aren't kicking on because nobody's in that room, so it's not registering occupied. Lights aren't on in anything. We basically turn everything off we don't need. And then as we go through the building, we'll turn off the univents, we'll turn off, the little air conditioning units, we turned all those off. We want to basically reduce everything as much as we can. Right now, like the freezer and cooler in the kitchen are turned off.
Okay,
Because
great.
they took the food is out because they're
Yep.
replacing them, so it's
Yep.
like, well, there's no sense in running
Right,
them.
right.
Turn everything off. But usually in the summertime, we try to turn as much off as we can, because it doesn't make much sense to light and heat an area that nobody's gonna be in until August.
So you got that wraparound care, so is that something you're thinking that could be a Fund 80?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's probably not, that's a significant, like in the summer, that's probably most of your electric bill is that
Right.
wraparound care in the buildings, right?
So that'll be part of our future study with Fund 80.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're happy to, again, be a resource
Yeah,
for Jeff on
absolutely.
that, so, yeah,
Great.
okay.
All right. Any other questions for Data Wrangler?
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a lot of answers, but.
we need to continue to look everywhere we can to economize, and I think this is one way for, yes, some initial investment, again, through Fund 50, that the meter was installed, and then there is a fee that we pay monthly for, these conversations and reports, but I think it's well worth it to at least know, I was saying before the meeting, to at least have a district know they're doing what they can to keep things in check. Even if you don't have a savings, although I do think we will have savings because of our systems. So, do appreciate you coming out and
Well, thank you
talking
very much.
tonight.
Yeah, and if you guys have any other ideas that you think might be fruitful, don't be afraid to shoot them my way. Bob and Mike have my email, and it's more than worth giving it a try.
All right, thanks, and you can leave. You can go home and enjoy this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Dismissed. There we go. Thank you.
They don't have to listen to all this fun.
Thank you guys very much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you,
And when
guys.
Jeff
Good
gets
seeing
back,
you again.
just let me know, because, yeah, I'll walk through it, the reports with you.
Yes,
No, she actually texted me, she's like, "Man, you
sounds
guys."
good. Thank you.
She's usually like, she'll pop on at least for a little while just to see what's going on.
All right, so on to our other items. So first off, we have Data Wrangler. There they are. Thanks, have a
Thank you,
great one.
guys. Good seeing you again.
Thanks, Bob. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Bob.
The next up is Policy 34-1, Discussion, Review, and Final Read. Just a reminder of the portal, and then lastly, we'll do our strategic planning update and have a little discussion about potential goals. So, just wanted to touch base about our policy. Mike is on the policy committee, so Mike and Audrey now are policy gurus, like it or not. And so we have a batch, we have done some catch-up work. So I took over last year, we were in the rears quite a few sessions. We had done some pretty good hustle work last year, got through 31-2, 32-1, 32-2, 33-1, 33-2, almost. We're still a few in 33-2. 34-1, what happens is Neola batches these by cluster as they come through updates. Well, now they're on to 34-2, which is coming out like any day now, and that'll be our work for the fall. So we're getting up to a cadence where we're just about caught up, which is good. What I gave you tonight is just a reminder, and I've seen this, that some of you have logged in and checked out the portal, which is good. The portal itself is available, and you've all got accounts. I'll just show you up on the screen here what my view of it looks like, but what we do is there are drafts of policies that are in here, and you all have the ability to see those drafts. Only you can see them. This is not public because these are works in progress.
Okay.
So the public can see a different version of our policies, but only the ones that are board approved get published. So tonight what we're doing is we're looking through the disposition sheets and the overviews. So I find this is a really good reminder of just what the heck it is we're looking at. There's quite a few policies. Last month we read in our first read. Mike talked for about 10 minutes continuously with all the various numbers, ranging from policy 1130 all the way through a long list, and that's what this cover sheet is on your packet. This is the cover sheet that was the ABS report from last month. It's two-sided, it's quite a few. Some of these policies, as we discussed, are being revised, and some of them are simple language, others are content-based, and then some are being rescinded. And so if it's rescinded, what that means is that it's being done with, combined, consolidated. It doesn't mean kiboshed. Yep, it does not mean that the policy, we no longer have a due process rights policy. It just means that the due process rights policy is now combined with student complaints and budget. They've been consolidated into one longer policy.
Right, suspension and expulsion. Yep.
Right. So what I want to just touch base with tonight is just a quick read through, and obviously the expectation of any board member is that you're attending, to these written policies as much as you see fit. I've had conversations ongoing with Mike and Audrey as we had a policy meeting a while back. It was about 3 hours long, but got through a lot. So the policies here are listed. So this is sort of like your cheat sheet, your Reader's Digest version of what you have. So it gives you a little skinny on each of these policies. And then you can dig deeper as you go through the policy discussion on the website portal like you've got here. So I just wanted to give you a chance to read through these and at your leisure over the next couple weeks, take a look at them. And some of you have been involved in conversations around those if they're involving committees. For example, one of our committees, the curriculum committee, had to look and talk about Act 20. Well, Act 20 has a policy now for student academic retention, meaning holding back or repeating grade levels, flunking, if you will, the old flunk mechanism. So we don't flunk kids so much anymore, but there's a policy now that we're passing by state law that we have to have in by July, so right about now, that is what happens if a kid doesn't pass the reading test, doesn't pass the reading expectations for Act 20. So the curriculum committee is working on that in real time along with policy. So some of our actions overlap a little bit.
Have you,
July 21st, we're approving that Act 20 policy.
we have a curriculum meeting coming up though.
Oh, yeah, curriculum meeting is next week. Yep, yes.
And any one of us can
Can go
or
to
any
those
or
meetings.
all of us can be there if you're so moved.
Yep.
I should probably.
They are posted meetings, they're public committee meetings.
Yep.
So our next committee meeting for curriculum, I think, is the 14th, next Tuesday.
15,
Sorry, 15th, I'm one day off.
What
15th,
time is it?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
4 in the afternoon, okay. On a Wednesday, right?
Tuesday.
Oh,
And then the
Tuesday.
Wednesday is our finance committee meeting, and that's at 3:45. So we have back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday committee meetings to talk about various topics. The finance committee will talk a little bit about some of the stuff we talked about tonight. So,
We have a facilities meeting.
facilities is the following week on the 24th. It's a Friday, and I think 4 p.m.
Twenty-fourth is a Thursday.
Okay, I'll go through here and make sure I got my calendar up, so.
So
We
our
have got-
next policy meeting is not until sometime late August, right?
Policy
that's
is not
not-
till late
And
August,
that's
correct?
not set in stone yet?
No.
Okay.
So looking at my calendar, Tuesday the 15th, we have curriculum committee,
Okay.
4 o'clock. Finance committee is 3:45 on Wednesday. And then the following Thursday, the 24th, is facilities committee at 4 o'clock.
So right after our appointments.
Okay? So those are some upcoming
Yeah,
committee
because I
meetings that
couldn't
are
do that.
connecting our work. The 21st is our board meeting where we'll be approving all of these policies. So again, I just want to refresh and give resources to the board members about Reader's Digest version of policy, which I think is probably the best version. Just so you're aware of what it is you're signing off on for policy. It is never an expectation that you know all policy, but just an awareness of where to find it. And I'll try and do a good job of anchoring it back if we have discussions about policy, something involving a policy. First place I look is in the policy. So, any questions or discussion about policy?
They got that one pretty well done, right?
Right. Okay. Onward to our strategic planning update. So, in your stack of papers, you have this single sheet. This is similar to last year. I just took last year's sheet and refreshed it with new information. So, what I want to just talk about now is strategic planning. So when you look at our slide show here, this is where we sit in our process of strategic planning. This is really session 3, and 3A, I guess you could call it, because the next two are kind of married sessions. But the purpose of this is that the board would tonight have some discussion about, hey, what are some ideas, and these can just be words for goals. You know, is there a topic you want us to make sure we hit? And we'll talk through how that all fits in, because we want you to have a hand in helping set the high level of expectation. And then the goals are inevitably set by myself and our admin team and our teaching staff. Because you approve the school district, you don't necessarily run the day-to-day goal setting in the school district. So, that's what tonight's conversation is, but this is where it fits in our puzzle of strategic planning. The next session will be early August, more than likely online. I will be here physically with whomever wants to be, but it'll be available on Zoom for those who would like to be a part of it or watch the recording later on. So that's where the community and school team will start to look at those goals. And then the staff will have a crack at these goals on the 26th when they come back to work. We've got our back to school professional development. And then after that, we'll set a bucket committee meeting pretty regularly standing. So the buckets are tying in nicely with our committees, you'll notice, and I'll show you the document that kind of ties it all together, because we want the work to be aligned, and I think you'll start to see the alignment a little bit tonight. So we started with our vision. This vision has been in place for our entire, pretty much, existence. Ambition, belief, character, the ABCs of Raymond. This came through our discussions, and it's been pretty much right in front of our eyes. As you can look right there, it says in yellow, ambition, belief, character. And then right here above the door as you walk out, apparently I haven't ever looked up. So now I look up and I see, you know, as I smack it like it's Notre Dame, you know, smack the sign as I leave the building to go out of the locker room. So that's it, I can't jump either, that's it. So we knew the ABCs were right here, which is great. We want to make sure we continue to articulate those things. And that was a community-based outcome of our discussions. Then we looked at our mission. This was our mission that we had. Currently, it's currently the adopted mission. At some point, I'd asked the board to approve our new mission, which was done with the work and examination of the committee and the strategic planning process. This is our draft of our new mission. Normally, it would not have underlined words, but I underlined the words because I wanted to show that as part of our discussions, these were the words and concepts that came out of those discussions that said, these are words we think are important to us. So,
Empowering all students by nurturing a culture of academic excellence, igniting curiosity, and cultivating perseverance with a supportive community is what we're looking at for our new mission. We like the cultivating concept because of our agricultural background, using a word that makes sense. And of course, the curiosity was really, I think, the innocence and curiosity of kids is really critical. Now, if it's not reading well with you, if you feel like, then now you're looking at it, you can have a discussion and say, I wonder about, as we go through. And you can certainly, reach out to me and have a conversation about it. I'm not asking you to change it tonight, but just think about it. Sometimes when you put these things away and you pull them back out and you read it again, you say, I don't know. So, feedback from staff has been positive. We did survey staff, we did share this with staff, we shared it at our last board meeting as just an initial, mention, but again, this is a draft. So thoughts at all about that?
I think it's a lot smaller than the last one.
I like it. I like it better than the last one. The last one did not read well with me. I don't know why.
Sure. I think,
Yeah.
well, when you look at it, it is less words. So we're able to increase the font size. Look at that, wow. And the idea is that it simplifies down and focuses on those words that are important to us. So again, we'll continue to push that forward. I think what'll probably happen is, this fall, we would officially adopt that mission. We're not trying to force feed this thing. We want to give people plenty of time to let it marinate, read it through, and then eventually, when board approved, then it would be put on all the things we want to put it on, front and center. But then tying into that is last summer, we had a retreat. The retreat was here in May, and it was my first real meeting with the board. This was one of those things that came out of that retreat. This was the original 24-25 document, okay? I leave this up there because you now have the 25-26 document in front of you, and this is really what ties into, in fact, I gotta change this. This is 25-26.
Yeah. It says 24-25 on here.
Gosh, that's why I put it up on the screen. I can correct myself. And so this document has been enhanced to tie into some of the work we created on the buckets. You'll notice the strategic goals here. This is what I want your input on tonight. These are taken straight from our work with the strategic plan. So as we sat down and we created buckets, remember, for those who have partaken in this, right here, this is our strategic planning document. And it's not done yet because we're not done with the process yet. But this document starts to get all these discussions we've had into 4 main buckets. Our buckets are educational experiences, community and culture, safety and infrastructure, and financial management. And those are the big 4 things that we're trying to say, these are the most important things to us right now for the next 3 years. We have to have good, strong financial management. We have to have safety and infrastructure systems created that are going to help us be safe here and more. We have to have a strong community and culture, and we have to have educational experiences that are helping our kids get ready for high school. So I think, when you look at it this way, it's framing up really nicely. We could have more. I think it's hard to have more than 4. We tie these in then to our committees. So as we have our committee meetings, it's important that the board is aware of. I don't want, nor do I need the board at every one of those committee meetings, but that have teachers in it and everything else, because that's a lot of meetings and it's kind of an overreach of what your responsibilities are. Certainly not your lane, but I want you to be aware of the work that we're having teachers do. Because when I interviewed for this job, I used the analogy that the people who sweep the floors pick the broom. What I mean is the teachers are the ones doing the work. They got to be the ones writing the goals and saying, here's what I'm here to do. And you as a board member can say, yep, good job sweeping the floor. So as we move through that analogy, I think it's important that we realize the people doing the work are the most important people in the room. All right. So this is the overarching document, and then this ties into then, if you keep scrolling, this is where educational experiences, Dana will be our staff connection, she is going to be tying in curriculum committee and finance committee into this particular bucket. In other words, whatever she's doing, we have to be able to afford, and whatever she's doing has to be aligned with our curriculum work, okay? So the purpose of the committee then was established right here, and this is where the purpose is important for that person on the committee to understand. The curriculum committee is going to ensure that staff and students have the best, high-quality educational experiences, period. In the next committee, I'm in charge of. This is where personnel and the village, I think, and this is where Keith, I think, can help out, because he's got a hat and, you know, and two boards, leg in two worlds, whatever you want to call it. The purpose of this committee is to maintain and develop positive school culture that emphasizes community relationships. In other words, we have to have this place feel good within our community for our kids, for our staff, for our families. We had a great time at the 4th of July parade. It was awesome to see people. I was a little sweaty when I may or may not have hugged Jenny, so sorry about that. It was a little hot, but we had a great turnout, and the parade was wonderful. It was my first Raymond parade, so. And Henry thought he was like Prince. He sat in the back of a little MG thing, and he just drove. He thought he was in charge.
Yeah, we got right behind you guys and saw all the candy lying in the street.
That's right, yeah, they made it rain with candy. They got rid of some serious candy. So the point is, positive culture is really important to us. And again, as this goes through, you gotta make sure we're connected to the village and we're connected to our community. Safety and infrastructure, I'm in charge of that one. If Rebecca Brockman was still involved with leadership, she'd be in charge of this one, but I get to wear that hat now. And so also Bob, our buildings and grounds person, is involved with safety and infrastructure as well. And then board members, facilities, right? Because you're involved with those things, and finance, logically, gotta be able to afford what it is we're talking about doing with our organization. So again, that's the piece that's really important. All right, so this particular committee is going to establish plans and strategies to maintain and improve our facility with an emphasis on safety. So when we're looking at things next year, we will have to look at what our needs are, do some facilities needs assessments, which we've done in the past. We did them prior to our 2022 failed referendum. Some of those same items, guess what? They're on our list. They haven't gone away. So how do we prepare ourselves for, at some point, the big question to be had? What do you need and how much? Because at the end of the day, we have needs. And I'm not suggesting it's referendum or bust, but I don't know the other revenue sources that we're going to be coming into that are going to help us get some of these things off the bucket list. So that'll be the work next year.
Fund 50 or 80?
80.
Fund 80, be a part of this one, you think?
Fund 80 would be discussion of establishing Fund 80 could be part of this one as well, because part of our facilities usage, as you heard from Fund 80, potential is in this realm.
So again, finances with it too, so.
Right. So hopefully you're seeing alignment now, where all of this stuff is connected. We're not just doing random acts of work. It's connected to statements that mean something to us. Our last bucket is finance, and this is the one that really will have the Fund 80 connected to it, because straight up, this is just financial transparency and accountability. So creating those avenues so that there's confidence from our public. Our board has to have confidence in being able to speak and understand about what our funding situation is. So when Representative Wickey walks up to you at the 4th of July parade, you can say more than Happy 4th of July. Which I did start to go down that road, and I thought, I'm not going to ruin his day, but we got to talk. I just said to him, I'd love to have a conversation with you, because I think we need to, and he's more than open to it. So we want to continue to have those conversations, because again, this is where some of the work's really got to point us.
He definitely wants to come and speak to some of us.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, for example, and then this is probably just an example of when I talk about goals, the next part that I want to hear from the board about, which is really the last part of our lift for today, is what are some of the goals you want to see that come out of these buckets? So one of the things that's listed here is for the specific bucket of financial management. We want to restore the long-term financial stability of the school district so that we can meet instructional needs, fund initiatives in the strategic plan. We can rebuild the fund balance to a stronger position, attract and retain talented staff with competitive compensation, fund capital expenditures not separately funded. In other words, we gotta find a way to not have to, every time we need to fix the roof, have to go to referendum, because we don't have a fund balance right now. We don't have a rainy day fund. If something breaks, we're using our Fund 10 monies. So we have to get off of that reliance on referendum. And then respond to the unfunded mandates and other cost issues that may arise. In other words, Act 20 happened, it's a good thing, it's unfunded though. So how do you fund the training and work that teachers have to go through? Because we're asking them to do this work in summer, they don't get paid in the summer, so how do you pay them for additional professional responsibilities? And that's an unfunded mandate at this time. And you'll think back, Audrey, to the January in-service, the workshop, the convention. Those were the two sessions that were the most well-attended, is the, how is DPI gonna fund all the unfunded mandates? Because that's what the boards are shaking their head at, saying, you're making us do this good stuff, but you're not giving us a dime. So then, where do we get the money from? We're small, so like for us, it's fairly simple. You're talking 3, 4, 5 teachers. If you're a scalable next door to us, like a, a bigger district, they've got hundreds of teachers they have to put people through, through training and pay for it without any funding. So again, that's just part of the big picture, is how can we respond to these unfunded mandates that may arise? All right, so
the bullet point for that one?
Yeah.
That would be so that, because Jeff is updating our financial systems and how he handles the money, he's gonna do that. He isn't done with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have him be able to check a box.
Sure.
And so that way we can tell the public that, hey, we reviewed our systems, we're getting away from the old pen and pencil, and everything is.
So some of the work that we might put in the statement of work here is related to that. So development of financial systems.
Right.
Are you putting it in the right spot?
I'm gonna be moving all these down to the butt to this. These were just ideas that I bulleted quickly for discussion, but I'll move these all down into
Okay.
statement of work, because that's really where they should be.
Okay.
And then we'll put a little critical and whatever later.
Yes, yeah, and we can mark, what the priority here, whether it's critical, important, or normal. The danger of that is everything is critical in our mind, but when it comes to financial systems, but develop financial systems.
Budgets and forecasting.
Okay. What else do you want to see in this?
Well, we gotta rebuild the fund balance, that's a definite.
I really think that every one of those bullet points should be put into that, because I
Right.
think every
Well,
one of
yeah,
them
they
is
are.
important.
But you have to be able to put specific tasks to them.
Right.
They just can't be lip service words.
No.
No, and so under attract and retain talented staff, I would probably break that down into creating a
Competitive compensation matrix that aligns with,
Right.
which we do have this year, that Mike Garvey had started and we built upon and articulated a little better. Next year with Jeff, obviously, we're looking at what Yorkville does. That's the first thing we say is, what does Yorkville do?
Right.
What is it, WWJD? Is
God, I hate
Yeah.
WWYD, what
They passed.
what in the world is Yorkville? They pass referendum. By the way, I just want to point out that while people think we're very parallel to Yorkville, they have a recurring $1 million operational referendum. So recurring means it's not going to stop. We don't have any referendum here. And so that's just a big piece that Jeff is very quick to point out too, that with $1 million, if we were given $1 million every year from now on, we would be pretty darn good. We would be great. So that's more than we were asking for in our last referendum
When
question.
we paid off that would have been a prime time to introduce that type of referendum when we paid off that loan.
when the debt fell
Hindsight's
off
not
in
2020.
'22, that would have been the time to do that,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it was an opportunity missed. And it's one that has now made this a critical conversation for us, of course.
Yeah.
So again, we also, one of the statements of work is going to be reducing our reliance on short-term borrowing.
Yes.
That is a function of the fund balance, so, correct?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of conversation though where now, hey, the board is starting to put their mark on this document. So it's board approved, you know, as we're going through, it's collaborated upon together.
Or having to use that other loan, that state fund loan.
State trust fund loan, right,
Yeah, it's
right.
another one that.
Another statement of work will be reducing the state trust fund loan balance with purpose. You know, right now, we're just gonna be making the minimum payment, and that's all we're making, and that's fine, that's all we can make.
Right.
But the key is we can make it, so we certainly will. How about when you look at the safety and infrastructure statement of work, what are some things you're thinking about when you think about our maintaining and improving our facility?
Well, I think we need to create a list of priorities.
Well, we have the doors and the windows that need to be redone. Cause we have those safety doors up front and
I mean, Bob has
Bob
made
was
part of
talking
that list already,
yeah.
so we can just dust that off a little bit. And I think and then maybe maybe it doesn't go here, but the investigation of the community center for Fund 80.
I love that idea. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I really love that idea. I know I would use it.
Bingo night.
Yeah,
Loved it.
bingo
When
night.
I sat through that thing at convention, what, 2-3 years ago?
And
There's a lot
I
of,
probably had 10 ideas that we could do there, but I forgot them already.
You could do a
But I-
fried fish fry, like I'm thinking.
oh, there's so many things you could do with a community center.
And that's, we need to create that list, and so that when something like that, if something like that comes to pass, that it's equipped to handle that kind of thing. So if you do a fish fry, well, you gotta have this, this, and this, you know.
Well, it could be as simple as a book club,
Exactly.
you know, a cooking class in the
Right.
kitchen.
Your dance classes that.
Dance
yoga.
classes,
were
yeah.
brought up, you know.
Yeah,
Yep.
yoga, dance.
Right.
You know, we've got room for it.
Right.
So again, as we present this concept of Fund 80 in just a few months, we'll be sitting here asking our public to levy the taxes for pennies, but those pennies will add up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. It's not gonna pay for all of it, but it offsets our Fund 10 revenue, because that doesn't come out of Fund 10 then. So we move a portion of Panther Pride over to
It's a
that.
beginning.
But that's
It's a beginning point.
using the existing facility
Yes,
that you're talking about.
existing facility. This would be, you're talking more future facility.
Yeah, futuristic.
So for me, the other piece here is Raymond baseball / softball and our CBO, you know, our neighbors here. They would have to be involved in these community conversations. You know, there's gonna be traffic associated with this stuff. There's gonna be purpose. I mean, looking at our facilities out back, being able to successfully run high-quality baseball tournaments is in their best interest. You know,
Yep.
parking, concessions, those kinds of things. So again, we've gotta talk through those bigger picture conversations. That's why part of this is in this bucket. So we'll have to keep going on that. I think we have a facility study from 2022.
Right, I got that.
We will be brushing, polishing, you know, dusting that off and blowing off the cobwebs and saying, okay, what, if anything, is still valid? I don't know that we have to pay, you know, a king's ransom to have another study done, or if we can start with that and say, hey, can you just visit us one more time? Not a whole lot's changed since 2022 in terms of our facilities needs, because that was a pretty comprehensive study that was done
It
before
was.
that. Before that.
Over comprehensive, but.
Right.
I mean,
So I don't wanna get caught paying for something again that we already kind of
right,
have.
between Bob and the facilities group and you, I think we can,
Recreate a good list.
and then if we need to put dollars to it, then we'll get quotes.
Right. Right. And then, in terms of, other discussion here about, community and culture. Again, the purpose of this bucket is maintaining and developing positive school culture, emphasize community relationships. What are you thinking of when it comes to this?
Well, that would have been another one where you could have included, you know, you put it in the last one, but the RCOE, the other community outfits that are out there.
You're on the planning commission?
No,
Who?
You.
Me? No.
What are you on? You're on
The variance committee.
variance committee, okay. I think that's something when I think about connecting, what can we do to connect to the village on these pieces? We don't want to be replicating, duplicating work,
No,
conversations.
but I think it fits right in with the other
Right.
discussion. You know, if we work with RCBO and have a community center, and, I mean, people would rent out that facility.
Yeah.
Where are you thinking? That's,
And then
That's
there's
what we
4-H.
have to talk about is
Right.
where is the key?
Like 4-H, I don't know if they have a facility that they rent.
4-H currently runs our facility.
yes,
Okay.
they used to be at the village hall for years.
So,
So-
anyway, a lot of discussion can go into that.
Yep.
And a lot of people that know more about it than I do.
But that's where you being involved with the village now, to be able to say to the new village leadership, hey, we need someone at the table, and Keith is at the table here, but someone at the table,
Connection.
maybe more to connect and say, okay, these are great ideas, but can we stop the idea phase and start to get into maybe what does it gotta take
Yeah.
to do some of this stuff? So, good. Other thoughts about our curriculum, educational, and we can fill these in, I'll pull this out, at the committee meeting, because this is, again, this document becomes a document that everybody sees regularly. This will come out at all of our professional developments. Okay, where are we with this work? Now, what do you think a teacher's gonna do with this every single day? I need them to be aware of it. And then this is what's driving the bus. They're not gonna necessarily be working in the document, but they'll be, hey, how are we doing with this? What in your team meetings? For example, with curriculum, our professional learning community work, collaboration around data, improving student outcomes, that's all part of the curriculum work. So a lot of staff are gonna work in that bucket. But then there's also staff who have an interest in pushing some of this community initiative stuff forward. Think about people who are former board members who are our staff members, who wanna come to meetings and usually come to meetings and are involved. So these are all connections we can make as we're going through the process. So, this was just a taste of, okay, this is where and why we are strategic planning. And I wanted to just have the board take a minute just to reconnect on a quiet, non-community session to be able to connect to this stuff. So, any feedback on this?
I think it looks really good, and I think we're finally getting things put in the right direction, and at least kind of narrowing it down now, so that we're not just all over the place trying to play catch up here, there, and everywhere, and trying to make sense of it to everyone. I think this is working out really well.
I will have our PTO aware of this document, because they're another player at the table. So they're a potential funding source when you talk about playground or equipment or facilities. They're all part of it. So I think it's important that they're a part of the conversations too.
On the curriculum one, bucket,
Mhm.
do we create, as a board, create some of the comments or some of the topics? I mean, I want to see something like stay current with the latest and greatest educating techniques,
Oh, absolutely. We can certainly have that included.
right? I mean, you
So,
gotta,
For what we're
they don't
doing.
just turn up in your lap. You gotta go out and investigate. Like www.theschoolhouse.org. It's a,
Yeah.
have you heard about that place?
Mhm.
They got, the students are well engaged. It's more hands-on type learning. And they got very high student
Engagement.
engagement and
So these are pieces too that it may not exactly read like this once Dana gets her hands on it.
right.
But the idea is, yeah, we need to be a hub of good learning. Quality, STEM, STEAM. Also part of the community conversation is, do we need to build some kind of tech lab, metal lab, wood shop? I don't even want to call it, big wood shop. Put up a pole barn, fill it with saws and toys and lasers and things that people want to cut with, bending and melting. because again, that's gonna help our kids get ready for high school. Because currently our kids have no experience with woods or metals. I'd love to see that.
Fox River.
We can do it, we can get companies and private donations, and I know we can, but we gotta have a place to put it. And then we have to have it open to the community on a Saturday, for example. Wauwatosa East, my alma mater, has their robotics lab open once a month on a Saturday, all day. You can come in and play with whatever tinkers you wanna play with and check it out, and the elders in the community, my own parents included, are like, this is cool. Because they wanna keep learning and seeing what's out there, so, again, we're a great hub for that.
Put in a great big 3D printer, then I don't have to buy one.
There you go, a big one, that can build you a structure.
Don't we have several of
They
them?
have several 3D printers, but they're not big enough to print what he's talking about, which is
What are
a
you
home.
printing? Oh,
He's talking about building himself a house with a 3D. Have you seen those 3D printers?
They're almost
They're
kinda
you can
done,
build
yeah.
plants. Yeah,
My wife just ordered a cookie cutter. It's a special one. It was 3D printed. So you can create your own cookie cutters with the 3D printer, whatever you want.
in your
You know?
home.
Yeah.
My son will put his 3D printer on from his college dorm room and doesn't tell us, and then it turns on in the basement, and it scares us a little bit. But then he'll watch it on a camera from his dorm room, whatever he sent 3D CAD over to the 3D printer, and it makes it, and then he's like, oh, take whatever it is off the printer.
well, that dragon that Minnie lost was a 3D,
Could totally be replicated. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, the future is now. We gotta talk about these things now with regard to Raymond and what we wanna see for our facilities, because we don't have space to put those things. You know, do we always want a library in our cafeteria?
Yeah,
I mean, this is the time for us to say, we're doing the best we can, it's fine, is that adequate? Do we want a library that has community access from the outside, and you can lock it off to the inside, so someone can be in on non-school hours, and there's all these self-checkout systems now. My little 5-year-old checks himself out of the library. 5 years old, and he walked in and went, boop, thinks he's a librarian now. So it works out well,
That is
so
amazing.
it's all there. Again, we've gotta have those vision conversations.
Henry was a lot of fun.
So, that's what I had for tonight,
I have a
for,
simple question.
yes.
When did cursive come, teaching cursive, simple question, come out of something that we learn in school?
So we will talk in the curriculum meeting.
Okay,
So curriculum, cursive is not actually totally dead here at Raymond. We have a few grade levels that still do handwriting practice. It's the expectation that it needs to be proficient that has come off. So people still teach aspects of it, penmanship,
Yeah.
but they don't reinforce necessarily through all of the grade levels. So we will talk about what that looks like and can look like here. In recent legislative work, there's been some talk of that coming back.
good.
It never fully left here, because there are people that agree kids have to be able to write their name, but the penmanship and legibility is a concern for sure, you know, for kids that fine motor skill. So, we can talk more, Dana can show you some examples of stuff we actually do here.
Awesome.
Like I said, though, what would probably happen more so than it not being an expectation is that it wasn't reinforced. So maybe you learn it in second grade or first grade, and then that's it. And so, or maybe third grade does a little cursive, and then it just stops. And the kids that really want to keep going with it, keep going, and the others that don't, it doesn't reinforce. So, and then, of course, we hand them keyboards.
Yeah,
That's
what about
like-
typing class?
Just think about all the things that we've done in the past and stopped,
Right,
and now it's being reinvented.
Yeah.
Phonics, for instance,
Yeah.
you know?
some things go away and come
And
back.
kids that can't
Yeah.
read
But you
because
can-
they didn't know phonics.
Yeah, you can write cursive
Mhm.
on the computer.
Yeah.
You know, you can type it and it looks just like cursive.
So those are great discussions.
But
So
is it your cursive?
at our curriculum meeting,
You can't read mine.
Probably.
one of the open discussion items that's on the agenda is going to be, you know, what are some things you'd like to see us investigate? And relate them to Raymond, but also relate them to larger context.
Yeah.
So,
I really like the idea of a wood shop, just, we're out in the county, you know, and
Something.
you want kids to be hands-on learners, you want them to be tradespeople, and I'm telling you, they're making more money out of school than anybody. And we gotta get them ready for high school, where they're doing amazing things at Union Grove High School.
amazing.
And so if you see what they're doing there, it makes you back it up to us and go, hold on, we don't even have a shop.
Not even
We need an
close.
So-
introduction at least.
Yeah.
Intro woods,
Yep.
yeah. So, all right, good conversations. Any other conversations here for the cause before we would button up workshop.
Hey, are they getting rid of any equipment at the high school since they're redoing it all?
I can find out.
Yeah, let's just see what they got. Because
Because
once we get the shed cleaned out, we can put it back there.
That's it. We'll be talking shed clean out real soon.
Yeah.
What's in that shed?
A lot of
Junk?
Desks.
A lot of old desks will be coming out for people to take
Oh,
or scrap.
Well, someone's gotta do some work on it, you know, it keeps getting there.
All right, there's always something to be done here at Raymond.
okay.
I'll
Any,
catch up.
I think what we're just looking for here is,
Should have done over the years.
Most of
Yeah,
them.
well, it's easy. Shut the door and nobody sees
I
it.
make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn, is there
I
a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion adjourned, motion adjourned. Motion passes 6:40 adjourned.
Well done. Good stuff.
There we
That
go.
was really good.
You're getting back in it there, Audrey, you know? You only had to make me do it from.
My daughter goes, my granddaughter goes to Montessori. They are not learning print, they are learning cursive
Really?
off the bat.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
And she's in 4K. Well, she just finished 4K.
My son is 22 years old.